At the VA at that time, they were exposed to probably more Agent Orange than the guys that were in Vietnam, because we sprayed Agent Orange inside of the bases there to clear the foliage out. So our guys are walking around in it. In Vietnam, we were spraying it on the enemy. So in Vietnam, we sprayed it on the enemy. In Thailand, we sprayed it on ourselves. But
welcome back to the COS Business Podcast, #1 podcast in Colorado Springs.
Today we've got a special highlighted sponsor, and that happens to be our guest, and we're rocking some of the swag. Lowry Veterans Law. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And we have Timothy Franklin here. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, thank you so much for sponsoring the show as well. I know it's been a couple months of you sponsoring the show, and it's been a couple months to get you booked on the show as well. But thanks again for just
you guys are so busy,
Yeah, man.
Booked out till April right now.
Yeah, so we're rocking 2025. But again, thank you for your support. Every penny just helps so much with what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about your story, because it's so Lowry, we've learned a lot obviously with the sponsorship, but you're a very unique type of law firm. So let's kind of start with how you started with everything, and then maybe some uniqueness of Lowry Veterans Law as well.
Well, in the legal field, I guess we call what I do sort of a niche area. So I only do veterans compensation cases. And in that area, if a veteran or a spouse even files a claim at the VA and they get denied, or maybe they don't get the rating they should have got, or the VA didn't give them all the back pay they're entitled to, it can be a whole bunch of different issues, right? But I only practice in VA compensation area. And so there's many levels to that. You file a claim at sort of the local level. If you're denied, there's a appellate process. You can file these different claims like a supplemental claim or a higher level review. And then you can also go to the Board of Veterans Appeals. You sort of have all three of those options. Now, this is way different. Now, they changed the law a couple years ago. I practiced in what we call legacy, which was the old law. And now we're in sort of what's called the AMA, the new law. So when a veteran gets denied, he has three appeal options, essentially. And the highest level is the Board of Veterans Appeals. And when you lose at the Board of Veterans Appeals, there's a whole court system in Washington, D.C. called the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. And that takes it outside of the VA. And then you argue against Office of General Counsel for the VA with actual judges in D.C. And then it's the Federal Circuit. And then just recently, the last 3 years, quite a few veterans law cases have made it to the Supreme Court of the United States. And so I practice at all levels. I have not been to the Supreme Court, but I got my start arguing in DC, doing Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. All I did was file appeals at the court there. I was essentially an appellate attorney. And that's because a long time ago, there really wasn't a big population of attorneys that practice at the lower level, because the VA, not that they didn't allow it, but they had a rule you could only charge $10. And so you can imagine that nobody was like jumping into the field. But somewhere along the way, around 2007, Congress said, no, that's, not fair. They're limiting veterans' access to qualified representation. And now you can charge at the local level. And at the court, it's actually free to veterans, because you bill the government under the Equal Access to Justice Act. So if I prove that the VA didn't do right by the veteran, the government actually pays me for all the time to work on that case. And so that's nice, except for the fact you got to win in order to get paid. But if you don't win, you don't ask the veteran for any money. It's just you lost, so.
We'd like to take a quick break and thank our sponsors. Lowry Veterans Law.
That's perfect.
Lowry Veterans Law is a nationwide veterans disability firm based in Colorado. Their VA-accredited attorneys specialize in TDIU unemployability, PTSD, and secondary service connection claims.
They work on contingency, no upfront fees, so they only get paid when you do.
If the VA hasn't given you the rating you deserve, get a free case evaluation at LowryVeteransLaw.com or call 719-895 6979.
Planet Duct. Planet Duct is the #1 choice for professional air duct cleaning in Colorado Springs and Southern Colorado. With state-of-the-art equipment and top-tier service, they make sure the air in your home or business is clean and allergen-free. Breathe easier with Planet Duct. Learn more at planetduct.com.
Franchise Succeed. Looking to invest in a franchise or grow your current one? The experts at Franchise Succeed help you navigate the world of franchising with proven strategies and guidance. Whether you're a first-time owner or scaling a franchise empire, they're here to help. Visit franchisesucceed.com to get started. That's franchisesucceed.com. Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care.
Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care offers affordable, accessible healthcare with a focus on you. They provide exceptional primary care without the hassle of insurance barriers. Experience a patient-centered approach. Learn more at pinnacleapc.com.
Celebrity DJ. Make your next event unforgettable with Celebrity DJ. From weddings to corporate events, they deliver energy and entertainment that keeps the party going. Visit celebrity-dj.com to book your DJ today.
Storybook Destinations. Turn your dream vacation into a reality with Storybook Destinations. They specialize in creating custom travel experiences from Disney vacations to bucket list adventures. Start planning today at StorybookDestinations.com. That's StorybookDestinations.com.
Awesome Home Services. Awesome Home Services delivers top-notch HVAC solutions for your home. Whether you need heating, cooling, or system maintenance, they ensure your comfort year-round. Visit awesomeservice.com for your HVAC needs. That's awesomeservice.com. And now let's get back to the show. Well, walk us a little bit more through the steps. So like a veteran gets out of their service, say after like 4 or 5 years, they're able to apply for these specific benefits and compensations through the VA, correct? Is it?
Yeah, well, they can apply at any time as long as they're out of service. And now I don't know if you would say it's the VA or the military's doing a lot better job than they used to in the past. They basically will send you through med boards and stuff, and a lot of veterans now will walk out with that VA rating, which they can also appeal. So they get out of service. VA says you're at 30% based on your military records. Once they get that decision, they could call somebody like me and say, whoa, 30%, that doesn't sound right. And we could appeal that. Now, the older guys and gals, and a lot of the people that I represented a lot of Vietnam era veterans, which is becoming less and less, but there's still whole bunch of them out there, right? And Korean veterans, and even less of them exist now. And then I actually had World War II clients, which I haven't had one of those walk in the door for several years, obviously, because
they're aging out.
They're almost aged out, actually. So you can apply for your VA benefits at any time. It doesn't matter when you got out of service. So that's a great question, because with the Vietnam era guys in particular, they really turned away from the VA because of, the struggles with coming home and stuff. And they weren't, well received. We've all seen the movies and everything else. I don't think that, I wasn't very old at that time, but it's not the same as it is now. There wasn't people putting up yellow ribbons and welcoming them home. And so a lot of guys didn't go to the VA for healthcare, didn't apply for benefits, and either didn't want to or didn't know they were entitled to things. The government did not do a good job at telling them you should do this and you should do that. Make sure you take care of this. Make sure you take care of that. It was terrible back then. And probably the same for the Korean veterans as well. And so sometimes there is a misconception if you don't apply within a certain amount of time, then you're not entitled to the benefits. But that's not true at all. And in fact, this major piece of legislation just passed called the Pact Act. And what we're really focusing on is the burn pits and all that stuff. I'm sure you guys have heard about that. Is that the Gulf War era veterans in Afghanistan and Iraq are now entitled to certain presumptions for the exposures and stuff like that. But the big part of the Pact Act also still applied to Vietnam era veterans. Like, I really kind of specialized in representing Vietnam veterans that served in Thailand. So they didn't have their feet on the ground of Vietnam. And at the VA at that time, they were exposed to probably more Agent Orange than the guys that were in Vietnam, because we sprayed Agent Orange inside of the bases there to clear the foliage out. So our guys are walking around in it. In Vietnam, we were spraying it on the enemy. So in Vietnam, we sprayed it on the enemy. In Thailand, we sprayed it on ourselves. But the government never admitted we did that. But we had documents and everything else. And so it sort of over the years developed into this thing where you would prove that this particular, mostly Air Force, but a lot of Army veterans too, that when they were on these bases, because the government did admit they sprayed the perimeter.
And how did they admit by that? Just so we're
it
clear.
came out through, take a little credit for lawyers pressing them. Like there was an Army field manual. Well, I don't want somebody to call up and catch me on the exact chain of events, but essentially what happens, there was this declassified report called the Checo report, and it said, oh no, we need to use herbicides over there to clear the bases. And for jungle warfare, like the bases in Taiwan could be attacked so easily because the vegetation was so thick, they had to clear that out. And so the Checo report said, yeah, we got to use this stuff, okay? And then they said, well, only the guys who handled dogs and walked to the perimeter of the base would actually be exposed, because we were just spraying it at the fences so we can see the enemy. And then some attorney or some advocate, said, well, wait a second, the Army field manual says there's a 50 or 500 meter spray pattern when they lay this stuff down. Their field manual say, hey, when you spray this is what happens. So we're like, well, it's not just the dog handlers, everybody from 500 meters past that fence, we're also exposed to it.
Oh my gosh.
And so it just slowly got, easing up, more people are winning cases. And then when you got the maps to these bases, there's a base called Utapao, and it's a big base. So you could have a 500 meter thing theoretically, and maybe somebody standing in the middle of the base wouldn't be sprayed. I don't know how they'd walk through the base, to get there.
Right.
But some of the bases, Takali and some of the other ones, are so small with that 500 meter pattern. There's no way you could be on the base and not be within the zone of where that Agent Orange was sprayed. And the VA messed with us for so long because we were saying Agent Orange this and Agent Orange that. And then they said, no, that's not what the report doesn't say. We sprayed Agent Orange there, because there were multiple different agents, Agent Blue, Agent White, all nasty stuff, right? So they're like, it wasn't Agent Orange. The report says we used herbicides. Well, Agent Orange is an herbicide. So they started denying claims, saying, well, no, this guy was maybe exposed to herbicides, but not Agent Orange, okay? And so it's all semantics, legal, BS. And so we're like, well, wait a second. That's an herbicide. Agent Orange is an herbicide. And then they started denying claims because they said, yeah, we did use those herbicides, but they're not tactical herbicides. That was never talked about, not in any manual. Nobody knows what a tactical herbicide is. They're like, so what they're saying is, oh, we weren't spraying it on the enemy as like part of war, so it's not a tactical herbicide. Well, the chemicals are exactly the same. And so several cases up and down through court, like, what the hell is the difference between tactical herbicide and a non-tactical
being exposed
herbicide?
is being exposed.
Yeah, if you sprayed Roundup on your, people are, winning suits. So anyways, it really just developed over time to where we kept backing them in a corner. Finally, with the passage of the Pact Act, which was great for veterans, bad for somebody who specializes in Thailand cases, is that they're just like, okay, we're not arguing with you guys anymore. If you're on these bases, we'll just presume that you were exposed to it instead of having to prove your MOS sort of put you on this perimeter, or you're on
at this time
on a small base. And that's really what lawyers do in this system is, that's talking about the difference of what a word meant. And Thailand veterans, it wasn't written into any statute or law. It was just in the VA's, they have a thing called an M21 manual. And in the manual, when they're telling their own employees what to do, they're like, hey, if the guy was on the perimeter, then maybe he was exposed. Well, we took their manual and said, well, wait a second. But it's not actually a law. Like they could push back on it. And that's some complicated stuff, whether it confers a benefit on somebody and becomes a law or something. But that's the stuff we were doing in court, and at the board is just like, no, this isn't right, man. And just fighting and fighting and fighting. And it's been, 30 years. And now finally with the Pact Act, they sort of threw the Thailand veterans in, just said, okay, we're done arguing about this, which was great because, every case could turn out different. One judge could say the same exact guy that did the same exact job was exposed and the other guy's not exposed. And that's really hard to explain when you're the lawyer for both the clients and you win this guy's case and lose that guy's case. Well, what the heck, and you're like, oh, it's just the judge. We got to go to court and turn this all around because they're individual. There's no like stare decisis on that stuff. And so that's just what lawyers have done for the last 30 years is, you know, the VA comes out with these regulations and we challenge it. And that's what's great about, you know, like for me being able to go to court is we can really turn things around and then bring it back to the local level and actually win the money for the veteran, you know, eventually. And
gosh, that's crazy. I have a good buddy that works at he worked at the Pueblo Chemical Depot. Oh. And what they did there is they disposed of Agent Orange.
Oh, no kidding. I never heard that before. He ended up
coming down, like whether or not it was, you know, part of the exposure or not, but with cancer twice. And he was fairly young when he did.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have a client who's a veteran who is a Thailand veteran, coincidentally, but his wife passed and they got compensated through the 3M suit. And so that was just for the non-tactical herbicides, you know, and so it's nasty stuff.
That stuff must be, yeah. And he says what they do is just essentially bury it and blow it up. That's like the way that
they're getting rid of it. I used it myself in the garden and the lawn, right? Like not anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about specifically like a Roundup or something like that.
Yeah.
God. Yeah, there's still, there's been some Roundup in my garage that's been sitting there for a couple of years. And
Me too. Like, I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty interesting things because you think about like animals and dogs sniffing around and like
the gutters, the systems, everything. It gets into the whole ecosystem. It's insane, and I'm glad we're finally awakening to that a little bit.
Yeah, and so you think about these service members, whether it's in Vietnam, Thailand, they've admitted now Guam, you know, and every day something gets added to the list, and I feel like I got off track, but to bring it back around. Doesn't matter when you file because shoot, you might have filed 20 years ago and you were a Guam vet and they're like, nah, we never sprayed anything there. The Pact Act passes. You're busy with your life and you don't know that they just added Guam onto this. That doesn't mean that
you're not paying attention to that.
Yeah, you don't lose out because you didn't know that when they passed the act. You can always file claims at the VA. Yeah, there's no time constraints or time limits on when you can file a claim.
Now, did they get notice of that though? So say it's
that's
10,
a big
20
one
years
for
past.
lawyers.
Yeah.
Notice is a big deal. I will say, you know, my job is to go against the VA, but you know, next to the Department of Defense, it's the second biggest administrative agency, I think, in the damn world.
Wow.
So they make mistakes. They did do a lot of good work with the notification with the Pact Act. I mean, it was everywhere, you know, emails and, you know, letters and they even went through people's files who had been denied. They miss a lot, of course, but they tried to go through files and said, hey, you were denied in the past. You should reapply. And stuff like that. And I think they called it like a special mandated review or something. And so they do try to take care of the guys. As a lawyer, you know, I like to tell my clients, they get it right about 80% of the time or 70%. You know, you really come and hire somebody like me for more of the difficult cases.
And so when someone comes into you, what's like the typical story with them? Are they like someone who's completely lost? It sounds like some of them have been out of the military for 20 something years or decades.
Yeah, all over the map. I mean, I got, you know, homeless people struggling. Wow. I also have bankers, doctors, lawyers. I represent people that work for the VA. I've had several veteran service officers that work on these claims and know it. And they're like, hey, can you take a look at mine? And that's not to say that I'm better. Sometimes lawyers have, you know, more tools available to them than the free services do, namely like finding the right doctors and stuff like that. And so it's really anybody that served or a spouse or a dependent of a veteran that got denied. And when they're looking at it, it's like, this is confusing because it is really confusing. And I just need some help. But, you know, economically wise, it probably just follows sort of, you know, the same people you run into. There's more people sort of in this income zone. That's probably the most of my clients. Got a lot of homeless people, and then some people that, you know, are entitled to it, but they're not, you know, desperate for the money. It's just they are owed that because, you know, they had their arm broken in service and they're more, you know, disabled than a guy who didn't go do that.
Right.
And, you know, and so.
So what started with your whole passion behind this whole thing? Sounds like you bring a lot of passion to helping these folks out. Are you prior military?
I definitely do, but I got to tell you, I mean, I love this area of the law. for several reasons. One, you are helping veterans, which is great. So when I go to a party and tell people I'm a lawyer, they start cracking the jokes and they say, "What do you do?" Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, "Oh, I just represent disabled veterans." And then, "Oh, yeah, that sounds pretty good." And, but it's not all charity. This area of the law has been really good to me and my family. And I am passionate about it, mostly because of like some of the court things I told you about, especially for like young lawyers out there. When I said they just changed the law, well, they just wrote hundreds of new regulations. There's a whole book of new statutes that have not been challenged by the VA or the veterans at court. So like an appellate attorney has a lot of opportunity to go in and say, "Hey, this isn't right. Let's interpret this." And so it's a really dynamic area of law, like intellectually for a lawyer. And then getting the benefits for the veterans, great. And then just the sort of the agency process outside of the court really fits in with sort of my personality and the way I work. I can work fast. I keep a lot of stuff in my head. Not that that's okay for my employees to do that. But, when you start getting to know what you're doing, you can start identifying sort of similar mistakes for people that come in, or they tell you something. You're like, "Oh, yeah, I know what's going on with this." And I'm not a veteran myself. I have a lot of veterans and military members in my family. But when I graduated law school, which was 2008. It was supposed to be 2009. I graduated a little bit early. It was like what we call the black era for being a lawyer, because there were no legal jobs. We had all paid all this money, to go to law school. When I started law school, I was, later in life, about 30 years old. I had just had my second baby. So he's actually a baby. So my wife worked during the day. I went to law school at night. I didn't get any scholarships or grants or anything. It was all loans. And then we're getting up to graduate, and all the metrics are that only like 40% of people are getting jobs. Like they just did not exist.
Oh, man.
And I love my school, the University of Denver. I was a professor there actually after law school in veterans law, but I still think they messed with the numbers saying that 40% of the people were employed, because like myself being an older student, I was in a night program. And so I went to school with like pilots and computer guys. I even went to school with Ramos, the doctor lawyer. He was in my class. A lot of second career people, and a lot of those people went back to their old jobs. And I think the school said they were employed still, but but anyways, I was scared, and somebody, why I'm waiting to see my bar results, did this work, the appellate work in DC. My last employer, in fact, was like, "Hey, do you want to draft these appeals and stuff for me?" So yeah, I want some money, to pay for my little baby. And I had a 3-year-old as well.
Oh,
And
man.
so I just took it, so it wasn't like I was passionate about it and, that was my life's call. It wasn't, but like what I tell a lot of lawyers in law school and students that I've mentored is like, sometimes things kind of find you, and I actually did it for a couple years. And at that time, the work at the agency, which is really what most lawyers do now, like I said, it hadn't really developed yet. And I was completely petrified that I was going to learn this niche area and then be stuck there. And then you guys know, we just had an election. What's the first thing we hear? Elon's going to come in and clean house. Well, who's the first group of people they said they're going to go after? Oh, VA benefits. Like, what the hell, That stuff's happening all the time in this field. Like, so when I was working and I was like, I love this field, every day it was like you'd hear about Congress going to take away unemployability from veterans, or rewrite the code, or veterans are getting too many benefits, or this, that, and the other, And, lucky for me, the veteran service officers, like groups like DAV and American Legion, they go crazy when that happens, and they really get in there, and they have a lot of, muscle to flex with voters and everything, because lawyers are a small population. Like, I don't think they would care about us, but it's scary because, if they start taking benefits away from veterans, there's not going to be a real incentive, for people that earn their living representing veterans to keep practicing that area.
Really?
So when I was younger, I was like, holy cow, I should probably do another area and at least make sure I know how to do that. And I became a bankruptcy attorney and did like adversary litigation and civil litigation. And I just wanted, sort of back into it. So I did that for a couple years. And then when I came back into this field, I was like, okay, I'm never going to learn another area law again. I don't care about it. I'm just like 100% focused on this area. And it's been awesome. Like I'm on the board of the National Organization of Veterans Advocates.
Nice.
I've been to, it's a new year, so I can't say that I've been to DC 3 times this year, but last year I went to DC probably 3 times, pounding the hill, getting in senators' ears about all the stuff going on with veterans. And when I say senators, I mean, they're 21-year-old support staff. But that's kind of how it works. I did meet a few, I think I met the congresswoman from Wyoming and a few other congressmen or senators. They're very long days. We hit a bunch of people.
How does that work specifically too?
It's a trip because I have, haven't been I have a political science degree, but it was either that or sociology. So I chose that. But I don't honestly, I've never been like fascinated with the political structure and stuff, but it's, I'm a smart ass and I like to tell jokes and stuff. And it's different. Like you hear about, here's a way you need to present yourself and stuff. That's like real. Like you got to be super careful. I have a great group of colleagues, people from, doing really well to starting out. And, we actually, for the veterans organization, have a lobbyist that helps us, and we actually sit down before we go in and it's like, okay, talking points. And so you need to be yourself. But, I went into met with Lindsey Graham's office. That guy's got a lot of power in DC. And I was making a joke like, oh, I hope I get to see him cry. And like, oh my God, shut up. You can't do that. And I was like, I'm just kidding. Like, whatever. But, you gotta it's difficult for me because I'm an advocate, I go after people when stuff goes wrong. And so you're there and you're like trying to tell these, people that are, a lot of them, even though they're their support staff, probably been there for some of them 10, 15 years. They know how DC works, right? And so you really want to be like, no, let me show you what's going wrong. But you really got to sit back and you talk in real general terms like, yeah, well, these other groups, I could see that point of view. And you got to have somebody like that lobbyist to get to those meetings. You don't just call them up and they bring you in, unless you're, somebody like from their state. Because I'm trying, our local politicians, whether they're the Republicans or the Democrats, they're open because I'm coming from Colorado. So that's okay. But for the particular issues, I've been up there, Democrat or Republican. Most of our politicians in Colorado have been on the side of the veteran. So we're really trying to focus on the other people that aren't voting for the issues that we want to support. And you're really trying to get in their ear, So it's like I said, it's a trip. I don't know how else to describe it. And it's exhausting.
Oh, I can assume so for sure.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break to thank our sponsors. Home Day. Buying a home shouldn't be overwhelming. Home Day empowers you to save on your mortgage by putting you in control of the process. Lower your cost and take the next step towards home ownership with ease. Visit gethomeday.com today.
Fast Signs. From banners to vehicle wraps, Fast Signs delivers custom visual solutions to help your business stand out. Their team ensures your message is clear, bold, and effective. Get your signage needed handled at fastsigns.com. That's fastsigns.com.
Neon Pig Creative. Neon Pig Creative brings your brand to life through exceptional design and creative strategy. Whether you need branding, websites, or marketing materials, they've got you covered. Check them out at neonpigcreative.com. That's neonpigcreative.com.
Epic Eyewear. Stylish, affordable, and designed for adventure, Epic Eyewear has the sunglass and eyewear you need to see life more clearly. From the mountains to the beach, protect your eyes with high-quality frames and lenses. Check out their collection at epiceyewear.com. And by the way, Andrew, we do have a special discount, COS BP15, for 15% off, I believe.
Cars Helping Charities. Turn your unused cars into a meaningful contribution with Cars Helping Charities. They make it easy to donate your vehicle to support local causes. One of the local charities that we like to support on behalf of Cars Helping Charities, actually, and part of their sponsorship is Mattersville. and check them out too.
They're awesome. They are a tiny house community for veterans suffering with PTSD. They have a property out in Yoder, Colorado, and then they also have one in Sedalia, Colorado as well.
Donate today and make a difference. Visit carshelpingcharities.org. That's carshelpingcharities.org.
Dream Accounting Solutions.
Take the stress out of managing your books with Dream Accounting Solutions. They provide reliable expert accounting services tailored to small businesses. Simplify your finances at dreamaccountingsolutions.com. That's dreamaccountingsolutions.com.
Exponential Impact. Exponential Impact is driving innovation and entrepreneurial success in Colorado Springs. Supporting startups with mentorship, funding, and community resources, they help businesses grow and thrive. Learn more about their impact at exponentialimpact.com. That's exponentialimpact.com.
And now let's get back to the show.
Does Colorado have, I mean, obviously the Springs is like, it has a ton of, 5 military installations here in the Springs?
Yeah, I think, don't quote me on the numbers, I think the Springs is probably the 7th biggest veteran population in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Texas, California, and North Carolina is really large. So I think kind of like the Springs, when soldiers go there, they kind of tend to stay there, and a lot of people end up in Colorado Springs. Right. And I don't know if that's like, city limits or whatever it is, but definitely Colorado Springs and Colorado, number one. And then, I'm on Lowry Air Force Base right on the Denver-Aurora border.
Right.
That's 2 and 3 right there for sure.
Gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So is there any state specifically that you've had a lot more, I guess a little bit more pushback from, if you're talking about specific states that are not as supportive around their veterans?
I already made the joke about Lindsey Graham's record. Yes, I used to, before the AMA, which is the Appeals Modernization Act, came into, my big deal was getting in the people that are making the decisions face, like going to hearings, and they didn't have virtual options like they do now. And in fact, I used to be able to request hearings at sort of the local office. So I, for whatever reason, represented a whole bunch of veterans in Oklahoma. And so the regional office for the VA is in Muskogee, Oklahoma. And I can tell you, I did not enjoy going there at all. So,
Interesting.
And I felt like I had a lot of trouble with that office. Baltimore is a pain in the butt. And I think it's just because different offices were doing things a certain way, sort of had their own memos. But now what's good is with the Appeals Modernization Act, and it's not even that act that did it. The VA is getting more sophisticated with AI and everything like that. So back then, like if you're in Oklahoma or Baltimore and you had a client from that state and that was their regional office, Texas has like so big, it has like 3, California, but in Oklahoma, Muskogee would have done all the lower level cases unless you went to the Board of Veterans Appeals. And so you really had to run through that office. And so if you did have a bad office, you're kind of stuck there until you could get the veteran out of there and up to the board, because you can't just decide to go to the board. Back then, you can now, but back then you had to sort of follow. It's called exhausting your remedies before you could do that and get up to court.
So you had to move up
and so that's really hard to explain to veterans, is like, I'm going to go argue this case for you. Probably going to lose because I've been to this office with the same exact case, but I got to try because maybe we win. Then I got to get you to the board and then we can get out of here. But now they have a thing called the National Work Queue, which makes a lot of sense because some offices like Atlanta, oh my God, they're like so busy. So you have everybody in Atlanta overworked, trying to do decisions. And then we got Wyoming up here. And let me just say, I love the Wyoming office. Like, great colleagues there, like got some people that have come down and spoke to our clinics at the law school and stuff. That's a great office. There ain't nobody living in Wyoming.
Right.
So that office is probably sitting around, and I'm not going to say that they ever told me this. So, but they're sitting around with like, nothing to do. And there's all these people in Atlanta waiting for decisions. So now they have this thing called the National Work Queue, and the computers are saying, oh, you're at your desk. Do you have something to do? No, here's a decision. It doesn't matter if it's from Seattle, like whoever's in line, go to the person who has time to do it, because it's federal. There's the manual's federal, right? The manual they follow. It's the same for everybody. There's not a state specific way to do it. So it's great. They're getting decisions out a little faster now. I would say, except when the Pact Act passed, so many more veterans qualify for benefits now that they're kind of slowing down and trying to push these claims out. Yeah, there were some offices I didn't like, for sure.
For sure.
And a lot of them I do. Like our local Denver office is great. We're sort of tied to our local office since I'm a Colorado attorney. Like if I have an electronic issue or can't get access to a file, I deal with the Denver office, and everybody there's been really great. And we've had a relationship with them for a long time.
Well, you were mentioning this a little earlier, unemployability and I think
TDIU,
right?
Yeah, that's an acronym that doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's called an unemployability claim, the TDIU acronym, and then some veterans say IU is total disability, individual unemployability, or IU is individual unemployability. And what that is another sort of like veterans out there not knowing they can file claims, is the VA rates everything on a schedule. Okay, so let's say you have messed up hand, broken elbow, and sleep apnea or something like that. You get 5% for the hand, 10% for the elbow, and 50% for there is no 5%, sorry, 10% for the hand, 10% for the elbow, and 50% for the sleep apnea. 50 plus 10 plus 10 isn't 70. The VA uses this combined rating formula. And so a 50, 10, and 10 is probably a 60. And when you get higher rated, like say you had a mental health condition that was at 70 and a couple other disabilities that were at 20 and 20, and the veterans are like, well, I'm at 180%. It's like, no, they use this combined formula. You're actually at 90%, let's just say hypothetically, right? And if the veteran doesn't work or they're retired, the VA can't consider the fact that you're retired or you're 100 years old to deny you unemployability. They can't say, oh, well, you're 100 years old, of course you can't work. The idea is if your service-connected disabilities prevent you from working, not that they are preventing you from working, hypothetically could prevent you from working, okay, then you're entitled to this unemployability, which is just another way to get that 100% rating when those individual disabilities, when you throw it into what we call VA math, don't add up to 100.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more, and I know this is probably newer because speaking of Vietnam, but like mental health disability, was that even around back in like the 70s and 90s for a lot of these folks?
I would say mental health's been around for a long time.
Well, that specific disability compensation.
that was most of the Vietnam era and the Korea era would say, well, we didn't even know what it was. And they didn't. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know when PTSD, or now we call it PTS, hit the DSM-5, right? But the World War II guys, they called it
shell shock or something.
Shell shock, yeah. There was another word for it too. I can't remember what they called it, but they had stuff too, and they've had anxiety and depression a lot, but they weren't real big driver of a lot of the benefits for whatever reason. But so definitely a lot of the Vietnam area guys, they might not have even thought they had it. They came home, they did stuff. I remember when Saving Private Ryan came out, that triggered a lot of people who had never filed, and they had a lot of problems with that first 30 minutes of the movie. Not just the World War II guys, anybody I think that was in combat, something about that first 30 minutes of the movie just kind of like shocked some people, or did whatever. And PTSD comes from an incredibly stressful thing that happens. It can happen multiple times, of course, but it happens, it changes something in your brain, and then it causes a sort of, I don't want to say permanent, because some people can get better and stuff. And the way they sort of portray that is, in a lot of cases I had, is like, well, you didn't file a claim for 30 years. And it's exactly that argument. Well, I didn't know what it was. Yeah. Like, my wife's been saying that, I lock the doors every night. I scream at the kids if they, go out the wrong door, or I think the neighbor's out to give me, whatever the case is. Now I got a name to put to the condition I didn't, know of. And absolutely you can file for that at any time. And I just don't, the Vietnam era that, war was difficult. Obviously Korea, but we've been at war for 30 some years now, and all the kids coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq have seen stuff that we never experienced, in some of those other wars. And when they come home, they just want to go home, and so they oftentimes don't say anything about what's going on in service. Their buddies tell them not to. The doctors say you shouldn't put this in your records. And if you do report stuff, the way I understand it, since I'm not a veteran and haven't been through it, so forgive me, is at least in the old days, if you report everything that's wrong with you and you're just about ready to let you go home to your girlfriend or wife or whatever, or husband, is that you have to get held up for a little while, and they gotta do the proper tests and see what your disability level is. And a lot of guys just want to get the heck out of there. And definitely in the older guys, that was definitely an issue that I saw all the time.
Yeah. What percentage do you feel as though of a lot of the folks that you're dealing with have PTSD specifically related to other probably injuries from combat, or even just serving in general?
Well, I'm not sure like what that percentage would be, because I wouldn't diagnose the person. They would have applied and got denied or a low rating. So they're coming to me with that and telling me that.
Right.
And mental health claims for an attorney, like if they get denied, tend to have high ratings. Like if you prove the mental health claim's going to be a bigger rating and bigger retroactive pay than proving the 10% for the elbow.
Mm-hmm.
And so attorneys, if they're busy, would probably take more mental health claims into the office as opposed to like a hand, like I said, or something like that. So it's kind of hard to say what that percentage would be. I know, the Gulf War and the last conflict seems to have generated a lot more than the prior wars, for sure. I think that's just the numbers thing. There's more of those soldiers.
Gosh, that's so
and
crazy.
better at accounting for them too, I would assume too.
Yeah, but PTSD or PTS isn't always about combat. I represent a lot of people that were assaulted in service, and they might not have saw combat, or men and women who were sexually assaulted, and that's a whole that's military sexual trauma, but that's just what causes the mental health condition. So most people that were sexually assaulted or just physically assaulted, I mean, a lot of people get sideways with somebody, in the bar, out in the field, and get the shit beat out of them.
Right.
And they're assaulted, and they have anxiety or PTSD or something like that. And so the only real thing is, did whatever that caused that, is it related to the service? And so like assault and military sexual trauma cases are very difficult, and I'll tend to try and bring everybody in that calls me, especially with sexual assault cases, men, women. I've represented a lot of men with the sexual assault cases. They tend to not report as much as the females. The females don't really report either, though. That's like sort of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Some do. But so for my caseload, it's going to be a higher percentage, because we're trying to, those people that call in, we're probably, if we're busy, we're probably going to bring them on, as opposed to somebody who has like a 70% rating and is trying to go for that other 10, You got to manage your workload. You can't take everybody in, and that's, so I would, unemployability and the mental health claims, like if you could have all your clients, those would be those types of cases. I don't want people to have those issues, but if those were the only type of cases coming in, that'd probably be what a lot of accredited attorneys would be on the lookout for. And some big firms only take unemployability cases. They don't work on anything else, or only this type of case, or only that type of case. So
yeah, it makes sense. Well, you've been doing this for a long time, and it sounds like you're really good at what you do specifically. But
I hope so.
Now you have a team that you work with as well. Talk a little bit about like building a team as a business owner as well, and who they are, and so on and so forth.
So when I started my firm, I was hoping to hire veterans or veteran spouses primarily. And I've been actually successful at that. I'm not a veteran, and my girlfriend's not a veteran, but her dad is. But I have an attorney in Colorado Springs who's in the Army. My paralegal's husband was in the Marines.
Oh, wow.
And when I started, I had these ideals. And I've always been a lawyer that I put my head down and I just like to work, and just to be I've learned a lot running my own business and realized you got to be a little bit more flexible. And so like I had all these ideas, be in the Springs and Aurora and only hire veterans or veteran spouses. And it's like, well, wait, if I'm going to grow and somebody I've worked with in the past or some, kick butt attorneys moving here from Baltimore or something, it's like, well, that's kind of silly. Like they're really good at this. They know the area. I'm getting busy. I need that person. So I'm going to be a little bit flexible there. But that's definitely, I try to if I was choosing between two people, I would probably do that. And then we try to only support as much as possible veteran-owned businesses if we can. I got this kick-ass website guy who's a veteran in Utah and really, I think, did a good job on my website. And we're working on more stuff to add to it. I was telling you guys I support like disabled veterans sporting programs. As we grow, I want to do more of that. Like in the Springs, right, where we have the Olympics right here. Like I saw on Instagram, I started following this woman. I can't remember her name, but she's a Olympian and stuff, and I was like, oh, I should see if I could sponsor. And then I see like, yeah, she's with Nike and United Airlines. I'm like,
she's got the big sponsors.
We're not quite there yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that kind of stuff, and you got I can't remember the name of it, but there's like I saw there was a distillery here that's veteran owned, and
Red Lake.
What is it?
Is it Red Lake?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because Red Lake is a big one in town and it's veteran.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I ordered some gifts for my colleagues that have helped me out along the way. So I literally Googled veteran owned brewery or distillery, in Colorado Springs, and I popped up with one. I was like, oh, cool. And so,
there's a few of them, but I think Red Lake's probably the biggest.
The brewery for sure for beer. Yeah.
Oh, that's the brewery. So I don't think that's the distillery I'm talking about.
So maybe 1350 then?
That's 1350. I think you're right. I think that's it.
Nice.
Yeah.
We're right down the road from here too.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, stuff like that. There's lots of opportunities to do that. I can't, I have like case management systems and stuff that are giant companies. I don't know if they're veterans owned. I'm sure they got some veterans working for them, I hope. But, whenever I can, I'm trying to stay focused on that. And it's great because, like with my website guy and like the hockey teams I support, we share feeds and, repost stuff and it's beneficial to everybody for sure.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the jersey that you have on, that we all have on. In fact, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's my hockey team, Lowry Veterans Law, and actually, this jet is actually kind of my mascot, I guess you would say. That's a Starfighter. It's called. It's a really old jet, and really cool. Like their wings are so sharp it can almost cut your hand, but the reason I chose that is, I'm on Lowry Air Force Base. I think they have one at the Air Museum there. I've seen them at other air museums, but my ex-wife's grandpa was a colonel in the Air Force, and he flew in World War II.
Oh, wow.
Korea and Vietnam. And then he was a test pilot, and he was the test pilot for the Starfighter.
Wow.
And I remember when he passed on, going through his stuff, he had like this old plaque from like the 50s or 60s, and it cool as hell, man. It was like Starfighter and I was like, what the heck is this? And then when I looked it up, it was like, oh, and it said test pilot, and I was like, oh, that's the jet and this, that, and the other. And so I made that jet my logo because mostly I thought it was cool. And my ex-wife's grandpa, a super cool guy. Like I don't remember, he gave me his 1911, his military issued 1911.
What?
I still have it. Yeah, I'm gonna pass it down to my boys.
Yeah.
But he gave me that, and I don't know. I'm sure he had multiple firearms issued, so I can't really say it's the one. He flew around Papua New Guinea in the Pacific battle and told me he flew like 200 missions, received fire every time. At the Air Museum in my neighborhood, his plane isn't in the museum, but they have a book of other planes around the country. And I just happened to be looking at it one day. There's some museum in California where he was shot down, and some dude bought the plane and fixed it up and then put it in their museum, and then has a little thing about Colonel Tate. I was like, I was with my kids. I had no idea. Neither did any other family. I was like, that's your great grandpa.
What?
And
That's crazy.
yeah. And so super cool. But yeah, he gave me his service. At some point in his career, he had that 1911. You can't hit the broadside of a barn with it. I promise you that. But that, a cool guitar and stuff. And so that's I wanted to use his jet that he was the test pilot for.
That's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, and so that's on the jersey.
Right. And so how long is it? You said the team, is this team still in existence today?
The team is in existence. Like I was telling you guys earlier, the particular hockey league we play in, like, switched everybody to black, white, orange, and red. But we're the same team, but we'll probably go to some tournaments and stuff and get the whole jersey thing back on track.
And do you play too?
Yeah, I love hockey. I've played since 1996 when we had the Avs.
What?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm good, but I definitely play. Yeah.
We don't have the Avs?
What's that?
I thought the Avs were a Colorado thing.
They are since 1996. They were the Quebec Nordiques before that.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah,
okay.
we bought that team.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yep.
I don't know too much about hockey, but I know it's a
Well,
pretty.
you better learn because you're sitting in. You got Air Force Academy and CC.
Yeah.
here.
There's a lot of there's a lot of people that enjoy
Went to
it.
the
yeah.
University of Denver, so I am a Pioneers fan.
Ah,
nice.
nice. I lived up in Fort Collins, and they were huge with the Colorado Eagles. They were huge.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Huge fans over there.
Yeah, the Eagles have been super good over the years.
Oh, it's awesome. And I used to do festivals for a living. I did a tiny house festival at the ranch, and that's like the same community, or I guess the same campus as where they do the Colorado Eagles games. And that is,
Oh,
they
wow.
pack the house with that. It's like a huge, I wish we had something like that down here in the Springs, like it's different than college. We have our college stuff, which is great, but like they have that like minor league.
Yeah.
I guess we'll get there with the Switchbacks too, especially with them winning the national championship.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Switchbacks are the soccer team, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, they just won a national championship.
Yeah, I saw that.
So,
That's
I mean,
awesome.
they're really definitely on the rise.
And
here.
the s'mores, the
Yeah, the
baseball
s'mores,
team.
the vibes. Yeah,
Yeah, the vibes. Yeah. Colorado's Springs has always had an awesome minor league baseball program, like with the Sox and everything. But Air Force hockey, even though I'm a DU fan, I like have a very soft place in my heart for Air Force hockey because I just think it's cool as hell because, there's not a lot of Finnish and Canadians on that team, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Shouldn't they play air hockey? No, I'm just
Air
kidding.
hockey. That's right. I'm not laughing at that joke. Yeah, they're when I went to law school, the Air Force Falcons had the number one scorer in hockey for a brief amount of time,
Really?
which I thought was an amazing achievement. Yeah.
Woo. And then CC just built their new stadium like 2
Have
years
not been there. I'm
I
gonna
need to go too.
I think the U's coming down pretty soon to play them, but I typically go CCC up in when they play Denver, and that's always a huge rivalry. That's always a really good game. And now they're I think CC's doing pretty well this year, aren't they? Or
I haven't followed them.
yeah, DU's 5th and 6th depending on which poll you look at, but
That's a beautiful campus, by the way. Do you?
yeah, it is. I was in one very small section of it. The law school's in one building, but I've been around it. It is pretty.
Yeah. Do you? So let's talk a little bit more too about like the future of this and everything, because I know there's some new things coming in, specifically with the VA too, some new updates. But so let's talk a little bit more about anything coming down the pipe or coming down the next few years regarding the VA, and then even regarding your business specifically as well.
Yeah, we're just on high alert, and not just the Trump administration coming in and Elon Musk and stuff, but anytime there's a change in the administration, we got to like sort of keep our eye on what's going on.
Sure.
And I'm not cynical. I don't know what's going to happen every time the administration changes, so we want to make sure to try to either keep things as they are or make them better. The Pact Act that I was talking about, that's the major thing for the VA right now. They're still adding presumptive diseases and conditions on. That's how it was for me when I started, like the Agent Orange claims. They said, well, this certain thing is presumptive to Agent Orange, so we're not going to mess with you on that. But they add things like every year, like, so a veteran might have filed for heart disease in 2005 and the VA denied it. Well, in 2010, they said, "Oh yeah, heart disease is caused by Agent Orange," and so that now it's presumptive. When in the past we would argue that even if it's not presumptive, they should be service connected for it because there's medical literature saying it causes that. So even the Agent Orange list, they're mandated to update that like every certain amount of years, way behind on it for sure. And the burn pits and the other things, that's going to continue on too, because the weird thing about burn pits is several of the chemicals in the burn pits are the same stuff that was in the Agent Orange and the other chemicals. I mean, they were burning everything over there.
And explain to our audience, like, of course, what a burn pit is specifically.
Oh, a burn pit is, and it's not just in Afghanistan or anything, but it's how they dispose of their waste. They literally dig a giant pit, and I mean, they throw everything in there: medical waste, human feces, chemicals. I mean, they just burn everything. And so this fire is going, things that shouldn't be with each other all getting burned together, and it's just nasty, dioxins and toxins in that air, and they cause a lot of the conditions are respiratory conditions because it's there in the air, of course, and it's just really bad stuff. Jon Stewart, with The Daily Show, led this charge, and really, I think like he really had a whole lot to do with that getting passed, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I can be fact checked on this, but the problem with the burn pits too is that they're basing things on the samples they took over there. So when we have scientists looking at the air samples and trying to say whether this, that, or the other could have caused it based on these levels of the samples at the time, that was manipulated when the EPA came over to test all the air. The military put all the burn pits out. And so the samples we have to use are not accurate because they fired them back up after the EPA left. Now, here's the funny thing. They couldn't put them out. But whatever they did trying to extinguish them, the level that they would have been at if the EPA was able to get, realistic samples without the military sort of trying to, trying to think of, put them out essentially.
Right.
It would have been much worse, and I think it would support a lot more conditions that those things cause. And so that stuff's going to keep coming out and keep coming out. Testing of those samples will get better. Eyewitnesses, different stuff. And so I think definitely burn pits is like the Agent Orange of the future, because those guys are going to be around, hopefully for a long time. And realistic, I don't know what the military's done to change that, or if they can.
Gosh, that's so rough. That's just hard to even. It's just very disheartening.
Yeah,
it's nuts, man. What about the future for Lowry Law, Veterans
Law?
Law?
For Lowry Veterans Law is so about, I believe, a year and a half into the firm. It officially opened its doors June 23. I stayed at my firm trying to shore stuff up until August, but I had an attorney working in June. And right now, picking up lots of Colorado clients. Like I said, I represent a lot of people nationally as well. And I really want to try to find an even balance between growing and being busy and providing a good place to work for people where they can make money and, have a good life. That's sort of my goal, So, however that looks, not too big, not too fast. Just sort of take it as it comes. And I mean, the change in the administration is obviously hard. It's like, oh, I should hire another attorney. I'd kind of like to see what happens in the next, 6 months.
Yeah.
And see what the landscape's going to look like.
Next 6 days.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's no way the government can move that fast on,
and
on anything,
They could maybe, but they won't.
Yeah. I had some faith. Hopefully the government won't jerk around too much with the VA benefits. I mean, that Project 25 stuff I read was insane. I can't hope they don't try to implement a lot of that stuff, but we'll see,
It sounds like the area that they need to improve, as you were saying, there's 20 to 30% of what the VA misses. That's a lot of, that's a big percent.
And, I mean, I don't know if it's public perception, but there's just tons of people, pointing out that, oh, veterans get too many benefits, or that's The Economist just released an article saying that veterans get an absurd amount of benefits. That they're wrong. People talking about that there's veterans out there milking the system and fraud, and all I hear when I hear that is when I was a bankruptcy attorney, they said the same freaking thing that oh, we got to redo the bankruptcy system because there's tons of fraud in the system and people are just buying Lexuses and then filing bankruptcy and doing it again. I'm sure a couple of those people existed, but I reviewed thousands of bankruptcies because I worked for a bankruptcy trustee, and my job was to go through all those filings and look for fraud and look for people jerking with the system. It didn't exist, like maybe 1%, right?
Probably
it was people that couldn't pay
irresponsibility.
their medical bills, people that, were having bank fees, normal people that America, greatest country on the face of the earth, invented this system. Bankruptcy's our idea. Like, wait, we're not debtor prison here. Like, okay, this doesn't happen. Then let's give you a fresh start and start over. And the creditors are the ones that like that system, not the people filing bankruptcy. It's great for creditors. Yeah, wipe it clean, then we can start handing them money again and, making money off them. So the system works. But my point is that they just kept saying there was all this fraud in the system, and nobody that actually practiced in it saw it. I haven't seen any veteran walking down the street or came to me that wants to file for unemployability and says, I just don't want to work. Like, no, that's not true. You get about, depending how many people you have in your family, like a single veteran, I think gets around $3,800 for 100% disability. Okay. For some people out there, $3,800 could be enough to live on. It's close, man. That's not like, getting rich, and they have bills and stuff. And it's not like this windfall to a veteran. Like, I'm sure they'd rather not be injured and not have these disabilities. And the whole thing, obviously, conflicted here because I make money off of this system for sure. But going after veterans and compensation, we pay them. And just so you guys know, you might not know this, but we don't pay veterans compensation because they got hurt and we feel sorry for them. The whole ratings code is based on how much that disability prevents you from working compared to somebody who doesn't have that injury. If your injury doesn't interfere with the ability to work, you don't get paid for it. Okay? And so it's not that we feel sorry for people. We're like, okay, you went, fought this war or served, even during peacetime, and somebody who didn't do that has the use of both their hands and your fingers don't work. Okay, let's give you 10%, $150 sort of to make that gap from the dude who didn't do that. That's
Right.
that's all the whole system's based on. And so if anything, people aren't filing for as much as they're entitled to, not the other way around. And it just when the Economist released that article, it just put a bad taste in my mouth. And then, like I said, the new administration comes in and, they're talking about cutting government waste, which I agree, there's a lot of it, but not the veterans benefit.
Yeah, stay out of that
That's not
wheelhouse.
where to start, guys. Like,
Right.
maybe the lifelong salaries for some of the congressmen who never served. That would be a good place to start.
I think so. Yeah. I think we can all agree to that,
Yeah.
man, for sure. Well, listen, this has been awesome. You coming on the show and talking to us about this. I learned so much about this, and I've had many, many friends, family members who are veterans in our community who, I mean, were so underserved with their benefits and compensation. I'm sure we all know, living here in the Springs, at least one person.
Yeah, absolutely. Here you guys are going to know somebody.
Oh gosh, absolutely. One last question for you before we give you your camera. You starting out, you said you started out in your 30s and kind of did a reset and started to go into this line of your career. What key piece of advice would you give yourself back then when maybe you didn't know all the answers and you were trying to pivot in your life? Having a couple kids, young kids, talk a little bit about that.
What would I give I'm not sure because, when I was younger, I was the first person that ever went to college in my family, let alone law school. And, I did construction. I was in a punk rock band. I was just like a totally different person. And when I started going to school, that's, because I was like working construction and I got into a little, argument with a boss I had at that time. I needed to be taught how to use water flow charts or something for some construction project I was working, and the guy told me, like, that's not your job to learn that. Your job is to keep the sort of word for the workers working.
Yeah.
I was like, see ya. And my brother, who hasn't been to college either, although he's at MIT right now,
wow.
And he's my same age. He's in a leadership program. He's just one of those guys that was born with computer genius, And so he had made a really good career for him doing computers. And so when I went to school, I was like, well, I'm going to do computers. I hated it. Guy I was playing hockey with was an attorney. He's like, you'd make a good paralegal. So I did that. And when you're a paralegal, then the next step is a lawyer. So I guess the advice I would have gave myself would have been start a little earlier, because it'd be nice if I would have had, instead of starting my law career at 32, 25 or 26 would have been nice.
Yeah, just a little bit earlier. Isn't that weird? Like, as you get older, the one thing that you can't buy it back is time.
Time's the only resource.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And then you have some kiddos too, right?
Yeah, my kids are both out of the house. I have a almost 20-year-old and then a 22-year-old.
Dang, 07, 08's that long ago, huh? That's crazy.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I actually had that exact same question because I'm currently going through I'm 32 and I'm going through a career shift right now and going to completely change everything. So, that the advice you give here is something that I would take very
well. You know what I would say? I would say if you feel like changing, then change, because the world's different than it was 25 years ago, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe the job that you want doesn't exist yet. I've read and listened to tons of books, and the thing is, just keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
Find the thing you like doing. And, with you young guys, it's like your career has to be your passion. That's not necessarily true. A career can just be a career and can dig mountain biking and going to see Air Force hockey.
Yeah.
When you're on your fun time, I do think one thing that gets lost in the current generation is work's supposed to be hard, right? Like, I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
Your work.
Yeah, even if it's something you're passionate about, it's still you still have to.
Oh, like yeah, like I said, I'm passionate about veterans law, but I promise you, I'd rather be playing hockey or mountain biking.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
it just serves a different purpose in your life, right?
Yeah, totally.
Awesome, Tim. This has been great. This is your camera. Where can we find you?
Oh, so we're at www.lowryveteranslaw.com. I'm on all the social media platforms, Lowry Veterans Law. If you would like our videos, give us a follow, and you can get a hold of us on the website. Our contact form gets you right into the system. Every day it's getting easier and easier. You can download decisions directly into my system. Once we contact you, we can check stuff out, see if we can help. Other than that, sometimes I make stupid, silly videos. You can like those too.
Nice. Is there any room for the team? Are you guys ever recruiting new players on the team or anything?
Always
like that?
Recruiting new team members for rec hockey, especially when you play at 10:45. I'm supposed to be at a game at 10:45 at night.
Oh, okay.
It'll be about 4 people show up to that game.
Yeah, that's pretty late, dude.
It's terrible. The kids like totally get all the good times, and we get screwed. So.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Is that here in the Springs?
No, that's up at Big Bear, actually,
Okay.
where they stored Little Man, I think, was stored in the
Oh, okay.
hangar that I play hockey in.
That's
I wonder,
yeah.
I wonder if we had a sponsor on the show. He sponsored for like a year, and he did hockey and is around your age. I wonder if you know him. His name's Paul Bierman.
I don't.
Okay,
but
just checking.
there's a few people that play hockey in Colorado, but I'll
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
my eyes open for us.
I was just curious because I don't know how small the community is, and sometimes the circles run into the same.
What if you said that and he was like my arch, rival, and I put him in the box a few times?
Yeah.
that? Well, he doesn't sponsor anymore. So.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll get him.
All right,
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. And
You
by
bet.
the way, just like hockey's probably my 4th or 5th favorite, but it's my favorite sport to go to and watch live.
Hockey is the best
Yes.
live sport, absolutely.
It's
Yep.
so much fun. So we'll have to come watch one of your games for sure.
Yeah.
We'll be one of the 4. It'll be great.
Okay, I'll hold you to that.
Awesome, man. Well, this has been the COS Business Podcast, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
all right.